It was just a few weeks after the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, that Shanna and I arrived at the central coast of California, the small town of Cambria. We settled into our little beach cottage and went to dinner to celebrate our 10th wedding anniversary. After dinner, we headed onto the boardwalk that follows there along Moonstone Beach, much more Big Sur than Malibu, if you will. We arrived just in time to see the sun set. Along the north side of the beach, the boardwalk follows the landing and jettisons out into the ocean for about 30 yards. And this is where we decided to stop and to stand together in this moment of grandeur, to take a moment of solitude. You know, I anticipated the amazing sunset, watching the massive ball of nuclear energy, the true center of our solar system, dive into the Pacific Ocean, transforming the horizon with each second into millions of brand new colors with each passing moment. What I did not anticipate was the extraordinary light that still shone across my shoulder. It turns out the day that we arrived was also the night that the moon was the fullest. So as the sun dove into the ocean on the one side, the massive summer moon rose over the mountains on the other. So that even though the sun was no more, its light bounced off the surface of the moon and kept the moment nearly as bright. There was a lot of luck to our being in the place we were at just the right time that we were, and as we've learned, spending more time on the Central Coast, the greatest luck of all was that there wasn't any fog. But luck or no luck, the moment was off the sacred charts. Such a holy metaphor for so much in life and the journey we are on. And it was ours right there. It was ours for the receiving so long as we stopped and paused and were willing to be observant. Today is Christmas Sunday, the day we traditionally celebrate and also ask the question, now what? Jesus, Emmanuel, this incarnation, God with us, is born, and in the same moment, everything changes and nothing changes. As Christians, we share a core tenet that Jesus changed the world in the way that we would all relate to God once and for all. When Jesus was born, everything in the world and about the world was forever changed. It was forever different. It was forever better, transformed. I don't often speak with such a broad stroke, but Christians universally believe that. And yet, very little is different today than it was last Tuesday. For you, for me, for countless others across the world and around the world, police in New York are still turning their backs to their mayor. In New York and countless other police departments, these police still suffer from a blind refusal to accept even an ounce of racism in their ranks. People on the outside of society are still on the outside. The wealthy are only more wealthy, and the poor are even more poor, especially after all the pressures of the Christmas season. Jesus is born, and everything changes, and nothing changes. Jesus is born, so we turn off the chandeliers. We light candles. We sing and we rejoice the possibility of peace on earth. But sure enough, the next morning, in more than one 10-year-old stocking, there was an assault rifle. Merry Christmas from Santa. Jesus is born, Christmas is celebrated, but we're still left to ask, now what? And it's no coincidence that Luke answers this question right off. His people were asking the same thing we are, and equally interested in what came next. In Luke's birth story, it's the only birth story, really. Luke is definitive, decisive, that the first thing that comes after Christmas is observance. After 8 days had passed, it was time to circumcise the child, he writes. And he was called Jesus. Jesus. Or Yeshua in Hebrew, which means God saves. Jesus is circumcised in accordance to the Jewish rituals laid out generations earlier and written down in the book of Leviticus. Christmas has come and gone, and what's next? Circumcision. Mary's postpartum purification, the presentation of the firstborn son at the temple in Jerusalem, and an offering to the Lord. A pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, either of those things is acceptable. In the ordinary messiness of being first-time parents and a new routine of learning to sleep whenever you have the chance. Right, Brenda and Mary? Yeah, right. In the midst of the new, if not monotonous normal, comes religious ritual. Following the Torah. Practicing the family's commitment to Judaism. Observance. Every religion depends on observance, particularly amid the ordinary and the everyday, the routine of life. Observance brings the ordinary into the light and exposes all the beauty to be found in the shadows. And this is the genius of Rembrandt. Like many of his era, but with few peers, Rembrandt uses light and shadow to tell the story. And in our painting this morning, the circumcision, inevitably, the eye is drawn to the light. It's a spotlight, if you will, that shines on the heart of the story, directly, forcefully. There's an obvious and direct point, perfectly highlighted for all to see. The spotlight shines brightly on Jesus, who was held and comforted by his mother Mary, the rabbi with his intricate white robe, holding a small knife, bows before the infant and over Mary's lap and leans in close to perform the circumcision. At once, both a practical and religious duty of cutting off the extra foreskin right around Jesus' penis. And with a stroke of the knife here and there, the religious law and ritual was fulfilled. Snip, snip. The eye is drawn to this beautiful ritual between rabbi, mother, and son. And if Rembrandt would have wanted, this would be all that you would see. It is, after all, the heart of the matter, but in classic form, the artist paints characters in the shadows. Men, it looks like, all of them watching on. One holds a book and seems to record the moment, but others press around him to observe the ritual for themselves, ready to welcome the child into the covenant of Abraham, ready to welcome the child who could be the one, the Messiah, into the life of ritual and calling and great love that is Judaism. Every day, boys are brought to the temple for circumcision, but this time, in the shadows, there are men who have heard the rumors, and they are carefully observing. Though several years back in Cambria, standing on the edge of the continent and looking out across the Pacific Ocean and past the end of the world, there were hundreds of other places that I could have been. But that was where I was, in that moment, in that place. It was ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. It was sacred for sure, but what made it more sacred than the sun or the moon, the ocean or the mountains was my own vulnerable awareness. What made it sacred was my open and honest observance. Christian mystics argue, and with great fervor, mind you, that nothing in this world is profane. To the contrary, the mystical tradition argues that everything, by its very nature of being created and blessed by the Creator, is inherently holy. Whether something or someone or some moment in time is holy or not is never in question. The only uncertainty is whether it will be noticed by you or me. Christmas has come, and if it isn't yet gone for you, it's at least on its way out, and in its wake we learn again to live in the what's next. The ordinary time of living in between. On the one hand is the utter transformation born with Jesus and the reign of universal peace and justice, mercy and love that God hopes and longs for. And on the other hand is the brokenness of creation. Creation working to put the pieces together. And in the process find the fullness of God. While we work, and while we wait, while we live in this in-between time, ours is a journey of great opportunity. Opportunity to shine light into the shadows and observe the sacred in every single moment. Christmas or not. Amen.